Hi. So today we're discussing chapter 7 of the Primal Wound, and Nancy Verrier, giving another shout out to the author, who's amazing.
Which we were remiss in doing for the first couple of podcasts.
Sorry, Nancy, we want you to come on. So chapter 7, this is a big one. Here we go. The title is Issues of Rejection, Trust, Intimacy, and Loyalty. Issues, the first word. And Sarah's going to start us off.
I truly felt like this, like I related to 98.9% of this. And it just out the gate, that first quote by an adoptee, there's a deep yearning inside of me to have a lasting and meaningful relationship with someone, but it scares me because if you let yourself get too close, you can't trust that you won't be abandoned again. That fear of rejection, the way I take care of this is to reject another person first. They never have a chance.
Oh.
Which we've talked about.
Let's just close the book. We're done.
Enough said.
Oh my goodness. We have talked about it, but and it's just what struck you about that, Sarah?
Even like I still feel that fear rising up when I start to feel like maybe I'll have feelings for somebody new,
Yes.
it's still terrifies me. And, there's so much about it that, and we don't have to go, in a, what's the, when you go in a chronological. Yeah, that wasn't really what I was looking for, but, cause we can jump around, but there were the thing about feeling deeply inside that you're a bad person. I for many years just thought it was because the Lutherans, that every thought I had, God heard. So therefore I'm bad.
That helped. By the way, that helped.
That just was like adding on to my, but anyway, yeah. What about you?
Well, just how you read that quote, it hit me again, just you reading it out loud and me not reading it to myself. I'm like, okay, so most issues I've ever had, and it talks about, this is really about relationships. There's a quote in here. There's something they say in here. Maybe it's the very first one. Oh, here, this is it. When adult adoptees come in for psychotherapy, the usual presenting problem is difficulties in relationships. It's rare for an adoptee to come in and say, I want to work on my adoption issues, because we don't know we have these issues. When that does happen, it's usually after they've been in treatment for years. Then the conversation goes something like, well, I've worked on everything else. I guess I have to finally admit that my adoption might have to do with something that's going on. That was big for me because every relationship I've had, I've pushed someone away. Whether or not they broke up first or I did, I'm ultimately someone who's pushing them away the minute I sense something churning or rejection, or we have long distance, or there's a fear. And, my ex-husband used to say that we were in a war, and he didn't know I was in a war, and he didn't even know what battle we were in. Like, he didn't know that there was even a battle going on. And I'm like, oh, you're pushing me away. Forget it. I'm done with you. This kind of thing. And it took a lot of time in therapy to like really discuss this. And it started to come out in my marital counseling of like, oh, I have abandonment issues. I have these adoption issues, which, now I'm married again, and my husband's very loving to me about that, because he sees me. If something happens, I'll be like, well, we don't have to be married. I'm fine on my own. That's the first thing I say, which is like, we have this great relationship, and I'll pull that out. And it's very,
I know it's the go-to thing. One thing that really jumped out at me, and I wrote his name next to and I won't bring his name up, but the person that we spent many years on the ice cream truck talking about.
Yes.
It says, if adoptees have not completely withdrawn emotionally, this is the phenomenon they describe upon significant or temporary separations. This panic and fear have nothing to do with the present circumstances, as difficult it may be. Rather, it has to do with the triggering of archaic memory traces of the original abandonment in this life-threatening experience. So it made me think of, like, I remember one time, just sobbing over some imagined thing he had done. And my friend Sarah Walker saying to me, this has to be deeper than this moment, and it really was like one of the first not first, but it was like, that was that moment was my path to recovering and becoming a
Someone
you
said
know,
the right thing at the right time where the bell went, oh, wait a second, there's something else being triggered here. This is not just a normal reaction for this.
yes, yes.
I kind of remember that's actually all this.
Well, you had an earful for me for many years on the truck for you.
Well, and that's what we do. We help each other. This is a community, isn't it? I mean, this is the whole thing. It's like it got into this the trust and intimacy, because intimacy has always been a big thing for me too. Like I'll be very intimate and close to my friends, and intimate when I'm first with a relationship. I can be very intimate, like, you know, it's the wooing stage. Everybody goes through this. This isn't just adopted people. But then I'll do the whole like intimacy, like, oh, you can only know me to a point. Like, I'm not really going to show you my whole self thing. And I really didn't know I was like that. I always thought, no, I'm open and loving. And every person I was ever with, just relationship or even close friends, would tell me, you know, you have this issue. And I'm like, no, I don't. I didn't want to hear I had this issue. I didn't understand this issue, but deep down I knew I had this issue. And one of my best friends, Amy, when we were in college, we had an argument and I started to walk away. Like that was my thing. We were having something. I cared about her like I cared about, you know, a boyfriend, because she was my close friend. And so it was like very important to me, that friendship. And she was mad at me about something, and very like stronger than I am about expressing that, and was telling me. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to leave. I literally started to walk away. And she's like, are you walking away? I'm like, yes. But then I told her, if I stay, I don't know what to do. And it was the first time I admitted, like, if I stand here, I don't know how to handle it. You know what I mean? I don't know how to handle.
I do know, because for a long time, and I think even in up until I had Becker, probably, and Becker and I, when his teenage years, would get into, you know, yelling matches, and that I didn't understand, or I had good friends actually, like Anne Marie was a good, you know, I'm saying people's names, you know, friends that I would have, that like the friendships would stay intact, but it was years that it took me to understand, like, oh, you can fight, you can disagree, and it doesn't mean that's the end of the relationship. Because that's always how I'd be like, well, I guess it's over.
It's over.
It's done. You know,
the friendship's done. The relationship's over. Yeah. They're out the door. I mean, you and we've been through a lot because we owned a business together. And we've really just kind of understood each other. Like, you know what? I love you. You love me. That's okay. We can come to a different thing. And it's taken us a long time as people. I don't think 20 years ago, we'd still be friends.
No, you did say something that was kind of another life-changing moment for me. You said, assume that people are coming from a good place, you know, and that was like, and me I think from my adoption and then intervening circumstances of the way my life went, that I was coming always from a defensive place. Like never, I always from a defensive place, you know, you know, it's like having your dukes up all the time, you know,
it's a little bit of a fighter.
Yeah.
You got the gloves on.
Keep away, you know, you're not,
you know, and I love that that I helped you with that, because that was given to me actually, you know, when I went off to like a thing, an imago therapy thing or something I experimented with once. And they said, assume when you're talking to someone that if you care about them and you've had intimacy or friendship, that they're coming with good heart towards you. And it made me look at people different. Like, okay, why would they be out to hurt me? They shouldn't be out there, you know, because I used to be like that too. I mean, I still am like that. I just work on it tremendously.
Yeah, it's always
we're going to be working on it.
You know, it's always going to, you know, one step forward, two steps back. That's just the process of trying to be a self-aware.
It is.
Human on the planet.
And then I feel like
for all people, not just us chosen adoptees.
I just feel like we got a little more sand dumped in the bucket, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, yeah.
What else struck you? And I mean, we'll go back to the chapter. What else didn't strike you?
Here's exactly what we were talking about. There's a tendency to push for rejection, even though this is the opposite of what they want.
Yes, you don't want them to leave, but you say,
but you push them away.
Fine, leave me.
Yeah, or you find ways to sabotage, or that you'll get superficially close, but never really let them get to know you.
I've had that. Yes.
Yeah. I can,
That,
oh, here's one other thing
yeah.
that really struck out, was, uh, I know they're going to edit, thank God. You know, staying in destructive relationships because it's what you feel you deserve. You know,
Yes.
I like my self-worth just, so I stayed in bad relationships.
Yeah.
That,
There's
so
always the fear that even if it's bad, like for me, I never really had a bad relationship. I had untrusting relationships or not on the level relationships. And I felt like if I leave that, I mean, the known was better than the unknown, you know, because if I can't make this, then I can't make something else. That's that self-worth thing. If I can't make this
yeah,
happen, you have to have, you don't, it's like I would just be beholden to someone if they love me. You know what I mean? Like, stay with me, you know, and but you
yeah,
push them away, but when they leave, you're shocked. And then it's
yeah,
just this cycle. I mean, there was so many wake up calls in my 40s. I think really we're in our 50s now, we can say that, but in my 40s, just every year I'd have like, wow, why didn't I know this when I was 18 or 19, you know, which I'm sure most people say, but really an intimacy thing in
I
relationship.
think it's, I think you're ahead of me. I think it's like, I'm still like working on that stuff, but you know,
Yeah, well, who
what
isn't?
can you say? Everything, it's, there's always something new.
So another part that in chapter 7 that got me sort of thinking, and I think I've mentioned it in my story and different times, and you've mentioned it as well, was the loyalty thing. So you have this, regardless of rejection issues, you have intimacy issues and loyalty issues. Like you'll be so loyal to a fault, and then you'll also, like I have, it gets into, I was glad it got into this. It got into the loyalty between like your birth mother and your mother. Like my mom's
Yes.
my mom, and I never even really wanted to say the word birth mother, even that, because I was like, no, my mom's my mom. Like there's not, you know, there was a book someone gave my mom. I do remember this, that had the two moms, and she read it to me so I'd understand adoption. I remember thinking, I don't want two moms. I just have my mom, right? It was like
Yeah.
this thing. And it took a long time as you get older to go, okay, I am loyal and loving if I want to explore this and find out two things. But it still goes down to intimacy. They're still like, this has to do with trust, intimacy, abandonment. Even that loyalty thing is looped in,
Yeah.
which I just thought was interesting that it gets in
Yeah.
there.
Um, one thing that that was not true for me, or maybe it had been true earlier, but like, was about, you know, not being intimate with women, not
Oh,
obviously not
yes.
physically, in this scenario, but you know, when I was like in late teens and I went into NA in
Yeah.
Miami,
Yeah.
I mean, it was the 80s, it was Miami. You can do the math. My drug dealer shoved an NA book under my door, and I was like, okay, maybe I should check this out. But there, you know, I got so close to a bunch of women that it really made, you know, now I have an abundance of really close relationships with women, and they don't scare me, and it's not, you know.
No, it's interesting. You and I both have really close relationships with women, and it was different for me when I was younger. My close relationships were with men. So I was close to my father. I was close to my mom, but I was close to all, well, and part of it's neighborhood, but I grew up with a lot of boys in the neighborhood, but I was a tomboy. All my friends are boys. It took me a long time to have intimacy with women, all the way maybe till high school. I had a few close friends that were girls growing up, but even then I was scared of them. They seemed to know more, understand more, like a deeper thing than I did. They'll laugh hearing this, but now I feel like I do have these close relationships with women, and thank God for the women in our lives. I mean, thank God for you. Thank God for my friends, you know, family that are women. It's like, that is the one area I feel really strong in, that I am a good friend, and I
Me too.
have no trust issues in there. I know why they're my friend. I don't push them away. I can speak
Yeah.
freely. Yeah. But I didn't have
100.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't have that. I only looked for relationships with guys because it was easy. They didn't
Easy.
want
Exactly.
intimacy. They didn't want intimacy. They wanted to play sports, talk football. I could joke around and be funny, you know,
Yeah.
older brother to banter that off of with his friends. So it was easy for me, but it took a long time to learn how to be friends with women, I guess. So I sort of did have that issue. But I think it's interesting you brought it up because that's where you feel safest.
I do.
Yeah. Even now, I don't necessarily. It takes me some time.
Now, did you have any relation to this line? Separating seems to be an even greater problem than attaching. Once a relationship is established, many adoptees do not want to separate, even when the relationship proves unsatisfactory.
Yes.
Duh.
Yeah. There you go. Years of counseling. Yes, because attaching is a whole thing. Okay, do I trust? I got to get in there. I have to be close to someone. That's a whole thing. If you get to that, and then the separation part, it's like it almost made me crazy when I was younger. I would get crazy about it. And I heard it. I wish I could go back. It's like AA. I haven't been in AA, but I've had friends that are in AA, and I feel like I have a list of apologies I want to make. Call up and be like, you know what? I'm sorry. I was so horrible. I'm just figuring out why.
Just send them a link to the podcast.
I almost hope they listen because you think, God, I didn't mean to. I mean, you're a young man. I didn't mean to like wreck your world, but I didn't know. And so, yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think about the times that when I was younger and when I did get really close, or then there were men that would pursue and break down my walls and then disappear, like once they got, and then that would be devastating to me. Like that I finally
that's worse
opened up
and
they confirmed my worst nightmares. So
there was like girls in high school or girls, in college age or just in your 20s, they get hurt and they'd be like, well, dude, that guy's out. I'd be like, like, I can't breathe. And why did you leave me? And they're like, why are you so upset about that? You know what I mean? But I couldn't, it was that being left. It doesn't matter who leaves you. They left you.
Yes, exactly. I think in summary, I thought this was interesting. The very last line of the chapter, the child feels guilty for having been born.
Yes. That's heavy. Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that. How do you feel about that?
I highlighted it and I'm not sure why I did.
No, it struck me.
It's something to ruminate on, I think.
I think so. And I think different people with different adoption experiences will have stronger feelings of that line. Like, I don't know if I felt guilty, but I feel like when I let people down, I had that guilt. If I let them down, they must be disappointed they picked me. You know what I mean? They could have had such a better kid that, didn't do whatever I was doing. So it's like I had that, and that might be part of that. And I can imagine, depending on people's situations, that could get really heavy. I mean, she really digs into stuff here, Nancy.
She does. I can't wait until she's hopefully I'm not going to say hopefully, I'm going to manifest.
We're going to manifest.
Going to be on our podcast. Exactly.
Yep. I think so.
So that ends chapter 7. Chapter 8, it will be an interesting one too.
It sure will. Please tune in.
Please tune in.